What is it? Oh gosh. It sounds classical almost. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Ah. Ooh, that was a little rough. But it was okay. That was all right. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about one of the tracks off of the new Mario Kart World game on the new Nintendo Switch 2. As usual, the Mario Kart series tends to come with amazing music, especially played by live musicians, which is one of the most iconic things about it. The soundtracks are full of incredible compositions that usually have a little bit of a jazz flair in it. Today we're going to be looking at one of the solos, and it's definitely a masterclass in how to build a great solo. Some of you might remember that there's another solo that also became very popular in the Mario Kart series. This is none other than Dolphin Shoals' sax solo that became a bit of a jazz meme, you could say.
I think that's been transposed onto every instrument known to man at this point.
I got the idea for this because I was snooping around YouTube the other day, and I noticed that there was a user that basically thinks that one of the licks from this synth solo in the new Rainbow Road is going to be the new jazz lick meme. That's not to say that it's bad at all. That's actually to say that it's a really great jazz lick that happens to be a part of one of our favorite games. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Why don't we listen to it a little bit to kind of get an idea? Okay, so this is the beginning, and I'll show you just a little bit of the melody. It's interesting because right off the bat when I was listening to this, I realized from having previous experience playing the Mario Kart games before, a lot of the sounds and a lot of the melodies and kind of things, instruments and things that are used alludes to a lot of the previous games, which Mario Kart tends to do that in general. They don't just come up with completely new things. A lot of the tracks will tend to pay homage to some of the ones that were created before. Okay, so let's skip ahead to the solo. Ooh. Yeah, it's so great. I love it. I just think this is such a great example of a jazz solo. And really, this whole thing is only 16 bars. That's not very long. That goes by really, really quick. But that's the thing is as a musician, if you only have that certain small amount of time to be able to play a great solo, you need to have some tricks up your sleeve. There's kind of a method and a way to build it that just makes a solo a great solo. And one of the things I noticed is that it starts off with eighth notes. One of the ways that jazz musicians tend to kind of build a solo is rhythmically. You start out more rhythmically simple, or maybe even slower, you could say, not playing like a flurry of notes. You're waiting. You're waiting to basically pull out all the stunts until later. And I noticed too, it's very pentatonic. And by that, I mean the major pentatonic scale. The pentatonic scale has 5 notes in it. And we're talking about the major pentatonic scale, since this is in the key of D major, the major pentatonic scale is made up of the scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So a lot of the time, you'll hear melodies, even in popular songs that you hear, utilize notes from this scale. I think personally part of the reason is probably because when we're talking about playing a major chord, that 4th note tends to clash a little bit more with our major sound than any of the other notes that I just mentioned. Our 4 clashes really harshly with our major 3rd. partially because they're only a half step apart. They're very close to each other. So we often call the fourth an avoid note when we're talking about melodies or improvising or whatnot, because it's just a little bit harsh. It kind of gets in the way just a little bit. It's not to say that we can't use it at all. And you'll see in this solo, it definitely uses that note in passing, as in not pushing it in your face, basically. The other note that's not used in the pentatonic scale is our major 7 from our major scale. And that's also one that clashes a little bit with our 1 if it's not used in the right way. All of this to say, the pentatonic scale is very useful for many different reasons, because these 5 notes are tried and true and are, I would say, a safe bet. So if you're going to go sit down and write a song, utilize that pentatonic scale, and you'll notice that it's going to come up with some great stuff. The other part about the beginning of this solo is that you could say it's very singable. That's one of the terms that we use a little bit in the jazz world. You could say is that if you're going to play a solo, it ends up being memorable. This is true for creating melodies in general also. But we often say that if it's singable, then it's going to be memorable. Because if I can sing this, then it gets a little bit less singable. But the point is that if you start off that way, you know that it's going to be simple, and it's great for the beginning of a solo because you're going to catch the person's ear. They might even remember exactly what you played and be singing it to themselves later. Who knows? But it's a great way to start out a solo to kind of get the listener's ear used to what you're playing. Okay, let's get into the lick, per se. Okay, step 1 for me was figuring out what chord is this over. And I noticed that this lick is being played over a D dominant chord going to a G major chord. Now, I would say this lick is a big lesson into what can we do over dominant chords going to 1 chords. Now, dominant chords, as most of you might know, are chords that are on the 5th scale degree going to the 1 scale degree. So in this case, we're creating a D dominant chord, which is basically my D major chord, adding on my flat 7 on top. And in basically every kind of music that exists, if you have a major chord with a flat 7 on top, it's going to resolve a 5th down to another major chord. Now in jazz, there's a little bit of more nuance added to this, because a lot of the time in jazz music, you could have a whole myriad of different kinds of extensions on top of that dominant chord. Now, on top of my D dominant chord, I could have a 9, I could have a flat 9, I could have a sharp 9, I could have a sharp 11, I could have a 13, I could have a lot of different things. So in jazz music, when we change the extensions that we put on top of our dominant chords, it changes what the players will improvise over that given chord. Now, one of the things I've learned in terms of improvising over dominant chords is that you can kind of do anything you want. There's so many different options. And I think, yes, it's good to pick an option, basically. But this lick, again, is a really good example of like, you can kind of impose almost whatever you want over a dominant chord as long as you resolve it. And the cool thing is, if you notice, the resolving note is the 3rd of the next chord. That's a great note to resolve on. Why? Because it really sounds like you're landing on G major. So I would say that your landing note is arguably more important than what you play before the landing note. Okay, so when I was looking at this is the best explanation I have for this. It's a little weird because if you look at a D dominant chord and we analyze all of the notes that this person is playing, it's a little bit weird. Before our D dominant chord, we have an A minor, which is basically a part of the very common 2-5-1 progression. Minor 2, dominant 5, major 1. Over the A minor, they're playing, which is fine. I would say that C sharp is probably what we call a passing note, meaning it might not really fit with the chord that we're playing over, but we're just kind of playing it as a little bit of a, I don't know, just to add a little spice in there. We're not giving a lot of attention to it, but that's why it's a passing note, because we're just adding it as like a little like part of our path, basically. This happens a lot in bebop music, where there's a lot of chromaticism and a lot of notes that you would say don't fit in the chord, but it's because they're just weaving around in a way that creates interest without landing on those notes and giving a lot of attention to those notes. Okay, let's look at this. That's fine. Why would we play a G over a dominant chord? Again, that's our 4. That's not supposed to really go with our major chord. Well, let's keep going and see what happens. Okay, you could say that that's a sharp 11, but I mean, I don't know. Let's keep going. Okay, this one is weird. Why would we play a C sharp over a dominant chord? A major 7 over a dominant chord. That's like a big no-no in terms of rules, if you really want to look at them. You could say that that's an extension. There's that 4 again. Okay, did you notice that the last 4 notes go with our D dominant chord more than any other? Why is that? Because we're playing the 3rd, the flat 9, the root, and the flat 7. Okay, this is my take. I think that this person, whether they were thinking about this or not when they were improvising, are basically imposing a 1, major 6, dominant 2, dominant 5, 1 over this 1 chord. What do I mean by that? The chord we're going to is G major. Now, if I think up my own G major progression, a really common one to use is 1, 6, 2, 5. That's true for really any kind of music. So, in this case, I think they're imposing major 1, dominant 6, dominant 2, dominant 5, major 1 over this 1 dominant chord. Why? Because you can do whatever you want. And what a cool way to utilize this little tiny itty bit of space that he had to throw something really cool in there to add some interest. This is probably something that they had in their arsenal, and then it just kind of came out when they were playing. If you don't believe me, let's try it. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I just think it's really cool that they're using this little tiny bit of space of 1 chord to impose a whole different chord progression over it. Because look at how much interest it adds to that 1 bar. So cool. Okay, I just have to say, that lick that happens right after that first, like, really jazzy, fast lick, that's like a very common in terms of the jazz improvisational world. Once they started to incorporate kind of a jazzier sounding vibe into the solo, they kept going with it and just kind of kept inserting it in there. And it really keeps up the energy and keeps up the interest. It's just great. Okay, the reason I think that lick sounds so cool is because this is the first time that they're introducing more of a leap. A lot of the lines so far have been runs. There's a leap there, but this kind of, that's a new pattern that we haven't heard yet, which I think is really cool. The whole idea of improvising is keeping it interesting, introducing new things, not throwing so much random paint at the wall that it doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, the whole idea is cool patterns, cool interest. That's the reason why jazz musicians, if they're going to practice in order to improvise, what you practice is just new ideas, new patterns, and new things that I could potentially introduce in the solo. That's a huge part of getting better, is just giving yourself more paint to use in whatever you create. Yeah. This is a very normal piano lick. This is very much based on a certain shape of the hand. Because basically, if I put my hand here, it gives me these notes to do whatever I want with. And then if I put my hand here, it gives me these notes to do whatever I want with. So a lot of the time, you'll hear different patterns happen with certain hand shapes. It's a very piano-esque thing to do, if that makes sense. I love this part. I love the like soundscape-ness of so many of the Mario Kart soundtracks. Okay, let's see if I can get through the whole thing one more time. Got this. Ah! That was so close. This close. So close. It's fine. Okay, well, I hope you guys have also seen how this solo is such a masterclass in just creating a great solo, especially in a very small amount of space. It's inspiring, at least for me, and this is the reason why I transcribe a lot of music like this and try to kind of analyze it and take some things from it and hopefully utilize some of these tools in my own improvisation. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to create more content like this. It means so much if you would support my channel by liking and subscribing and commenting and doing all the things that will really help me to be able to grow this and to be able to continue to do things exactly like this. So thank you so much again, and I will see you in the next one. Why don't we play through it a little bit first? My facilities are not what they used to be, that's for sure. It's super fun to look into music. Okay, that was better. Some of you might remember. I'd like to say that jazz has ruined me in some ways. But it's okay, because I still love it. We still love it. We love our jazz. We love our classical over here, at least in the world of Sarah.